Welcome back to Questions for the Rector. I'm your host, Stephen Heiner, and with us, as always, is the Rector of Most Holy Trinity Seminary in Reading, Pennsylvania, His Excellency Bishop Donald Sanborn. Hello, Your Excellency.
Hello, nice to be here.
We actually wanted to record this episode some weeks ago when Harrison Butker had given his speech, but you had a bit of sinus congestion and we had to put it off. So better late than never.
Yes.
So you heard about this speech, I think, just through the regular news channels.
Yes.
What did you hear, Your Excellency?
Well, that he was excoriated for having given this terribly, how would you say, degrading speech to women, and how women were horrified by this, etc. And when I read that, I thought, oh, this must have been a really great speech. Well, in the when you shake the foundations of liberalism, they scream, like little babies. So he definitely shook the foundations of liberalism, and he got it. But I respect him very much for what he said.
So I thought, obviously, we can't go through the whole speech today, but I took a few quotes and I wanted to have His Excellency comment on some of them. We'll start with the fact that he was addressing this graduating class. They were freshmen or sophomores when COVID was happening. While COVID might have played a large role throughout your formative years, it is not unique. Bad policies and poor leadership have negatively impacted major life issues. Things like abortion, IVF, surrogacy, euthanasia, as well as a growing support for degenerate cultural values in media, all stem from the pervasiveness of disorder.
Yeah, he's talking about the general collapse of the natural law. All of those things regard the natural law, and what is plaguing this country right now is an abandonment of the natural law. When you abandon the natural law, you are a sinking ship from the point of view of a nation.
Because we're not even doing what the pagans did, what the Greeks did, the Romans did. At least they followed in many ways the natural law.
To a certain extent they did. Yes, to a certain extent. But when human beings do not have the help of grace, and when they have turned their backs on the Savior, their rational ability is darkened by original sin, and they come to conclusions that are absolutely abominable. And we see that in the history of the human race. When you leave human beings on their own with the effects of original sin, they turn to things like human sacrifice. Even the Greeks did human sacrifice. Or they worship crazy things like flies and cats and bulls and the sun and so forth. These are the Egyptians. Or they come up with this absolutely crazy mythology like the Greeks and the Romans. Or the Germans, for example, before Christianity came to them, if a man died, they would kill the wife and the dog and then burn them all three together.
The Indians did this as well.
They did, yes. Practice. And this is the barbarity that human beings descend to without the Savior and without grace. I always thought, and the dog, as if they were to say, well, what good would the wife and the dog be, as if she was on the same level as the dog, if he's not around. So they burn them all. That was pre-Christian Germany. And so I'm just saying that the human race has a very bad record when you exclude God from government and religion from government. And that's what has happened to this country.
Well, speaking of the government, his very next sentence, our own nation is led by a man who publicly and proudly proclaims his Catholic faith, but at the same time is delusional enough to make the sign of the cross during a pro-abortion rally. He has been so vocal in his support for the murder of innocent babies that I'm sure to many people it appears that you can be both Catholic and pro-choice.
Well, there's many pro-choice, quote-unquote, Catholics. I think it's close to 50%. It might be over 50%.
I feel like you've always got the statistics, Your Excellency.
Yeah, that say that Novus Ordo Catholics, and that's what we're referring to here, think that abortion should be legal. It's right in the 50% range that abortion should be legal. That means they consent to it. They think that it's a good idea. They may not do it themselves, but you should be free to do this. I mean, this is murdering babies. This is mass murder. This is like Stalin and Hitler, and people are just absolutely numb to it, and even think it's a good idea.
He is not alone, from the man behind the COVID lockdowns to the people pushing dangerous gender ideologies onto the youth of America. They all have one glaring thing in common. They are Catholic. This is an important reminder that being Catholic alone doesn't cut it. Not everyone who says Lord,
well,
Lord.
yeah, I mean, reading his speech, I sense a person who is in the Novus Ordo and trying to make a Catholic world in the Novus Ordo. In other words, he's trying to be Catholic in the truest sense of the word in the Novus Ordo. And I would say that's something that can never happen, that can never succeed. I mean, he is a very small minority in the Novus Ordo. People who go to the traditional Latin Mass and who, under the auspices of the Novus Ordo, and who hold to Catholic doctrine. Obviously, he does, and I commend him for that. But he's trying to eke out a Catholic existence. The Catholic faith is one. The Catholic Church is one. It's one of its characteristics, its marks. You cannot have an amalgam of people like him and then the 53%, whatever it is, that say abortion should be legal. That cannot be Catholicism.
Do you have hope for people like him who hold the sort of orthodoxy of position, that they may ask the right questions and maybe
I think so, especially as the Novus Ordo becomes more and more, or I should say less and less Catholic. I mean, even if you could say that, as it recedes more and more from any form of Catholicism. Yes, he might ask the right questions, but that whole, I know that whole sort of, how would you say, that milieu that he comes from, and they're trying to retain Catholicism in a world that is not Catholic.
Well, some of your classmates from seminary went down that road.
Yes. Many of them, yes. When in 1988, when Archbishop Lefebvre consecrated bishops, there was the Ecclesia Dei break, and all of those. There's a number of groups that have come out of that. Fraternity of St. Peter and Christ the King, etc., and some other groups. And in my opinion, that's what they're trying to do. They're trying to eke out a Catholic existence within the Novus Ordo. I think that's impossible.
As members of the Church founded by Jesus Christ, it is our duty and ultimately privilege to be authentically and unapologetically Catholic. Don't be mistaken, even within the Church, people in polite Catholic circles will try to persuade you to remain silent. There was even an award-winning film called Silence, made by a fellow Catholic, Martin Scorsese. I don't know if you can really call him a fellow Catholic.
I think I've heard of him.
Wherein one of the main characters, a Jesuit priest, abandoned the church and as an apostate, when he died, is seen grasping a crucifix, quiet and unknown to anyone but God. As a friend of Benedictine College, His Excellency Bishop Robert Barron said in his review of the film, it was exactly what the cultural elite want to see in Christianity: private, hidden away, and harmless.
The idea is that the Catholic faith is not for everyone, that it's all a matter of your conscience, whatever you want to feel or think with regard to religion, that it is not the one true church outside of which there is no salvation. That's the Novus Ordo. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
But make no mistake, before we even attempt to fix any of the issues plaguing society, we must first get our own house in order, and it starts with our leaders. The bishops and priests appointed by God as our spiritual fathers must be rightly ordered. There is not enough time today for me to list all the stories of priests and bishops misleading their flocks, but none of us can blame ignorance anymore and just blindly proclaim that that's what Father said. Because sadly, many priests we are looking to for leadership are the same ones who prioritize their hobbies or even photos with their dogs and matching outfits for the parish directory.
If that's the worst thing that the Novus Ordo clergy did, I would say that's not very bad. I mean, the worst thing is that they no longer are Catholic. I mean, even if you set aside all the immorality that may be true about them, and that really is off subject. The question is, are they preaching the Catholic faith? Do they hold to the Catholic faith? And they don't. They don't, and Bergoglio is the first example of that. I mean, when I say they, I'm generalizing. Some may do. You might get some very conservative ones, but overall, the Catholic faith is absent from what you call Catholic churches today. Proof of that is, again, I cite Bishop Barron, 70% of people who call themselves Catholics do not believe in the real presence of Christ. Why did that happen? How did that happen? Now, he said, well, it's not blame. You can't blame it on Vatican II because Vatican II asserts the real presence. How many people have picked up Vatican II and read through all of those endless documents? Blah, 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 blah. Virtually no one. They go to Mass every Sunday in the new Mass, and they see how the priest treats the Blessed Sacrament. And how he hands it out to people, and how
and
they
all the
treat
extraordinary ministers.
All just even very conservative Novus Ordo masses. There is no idea that what is on the altar is the body and blood, soul and divinity of Christ, who is God. And that's why 70%. When I was a child in the 1950s, it was 0%. In other words, everybody said that was the true body and blood of Christ. I mean, you wouldn't even think about denying that. Everybody who called themselves Catholic would say, oh, yeah, that's...
And even non-Catholics knew that.
Yes, but 70%? What has happened? There's a cause for that. There is no effect without a cause. And the cause is not written in the books or anything. It goes to Catechism of 1992. It says, well, yeah, it's the real presence. How many people have read that? They go to that new Mass every Sunday and they see it. They see that the priest does not believe it. And they stop believing it. So that's the to get back to what he's saying, it's a much deeper problem than, say, some priests who are rogues or in some way not doing what they should do.
Or the selfies with the dogs. That's a much deeper problem.
A selfie with the dog. Who cares? I mean, I don't care who has the dog. I mean, that's really not. It's not terrible. The same about John Bosco had a dog. Maybe he would have had his picture taken with his dog. I don't care if he has a dog.
So next, he cites Jose Maria Escriva as a saint. He says, Saint Jose Maria continues that some want to see the priest as just another man. That is not so. They want to find in the priest those virtues proper to every Christian, and indeed every honorable man: understanding, justice, a life of work, priestly work in this instance, and good manners. It is not prudent as the laity for us to consume ourselves in becoming amateur theologians so that we can decipher this or that theological teaching, unless, of course, you are a theology major. We must be intentional with our focus on our state in life and our own vocation, and for most of us, that's as married men and women. Still, we have so many great resources at our fingertips that it doesn't take long to find traditional and timeless teachings that haven't been ambiguously reworded for our times. And there are still many good and holy priests, and it's up to us to seek them out.
Yeah, again, that implies that there are many who are not good and holy priests, and it's not a question even of their holiness, it's a question of their doctrine. And the figures don't lie, as the old saying goes, and the lack of faith. I think recently it was 83% believe artificial birth control is morally legitimate. 83%. That is a perversion for which you go to hell. All right. It is listed among the sins against nature in moral theology. Onan was struck dead for it in the Old Testament, and Pius XI, when he condemned artificial birth control, he cited that Onan was struck dead in the Old Testament for having done such a thing. 83%. I mean, this is no longer Catholicism. So I just think that he's living in a world that is false there. I mean, he's not really recognizing the enormous, massive problem of the Novus Ordo.
He's living, so the church he attends in Kansas City is the oldest in the archdiocese. It's historic, and they had a renovation in 2014 to put I think, remove the table. And so he's living in a bubble in which I think Catholic teachings are potentially given. Maybe they don't talk about Vatican II ever. They just pretend it never happened. And so he's thinking this is how it's supposed to be.
I think so, because if you really take a hard look at the whole thing, it is a disaster. And it's not merely a question of a few priests, and not behaving or something like that. This is a plague that has affected nearly everybody.
Well, it goes back to what you said, cause and effect. If you have to go and seek out holy priests, the question is, why is that?
Yes.
What has caused that? So this is where we get to the controversy, Your Excellency. So far, we really haven't said that.
No.
Here's where the howling begins, watchers and listeners. For the ladies present today, congratulations on an amazing accomplishment. You should be proud of all that you have achieved to this point in your young lives. I want to speak directly to you briefly because I think it is you, the women, who have had the most diabolical lies told to you. How many of you are sitting here now, about to cross this stage, and are thinking about all the promotions and titles you are going to get in your career? Some of you may go on to lead successful careers in the world, but I would venture to guess that the majority of you are most excited about your marriage and the children you will bring into this world. I mean, that sentence alone is a cancelable sentence, Your Excellency.
Oh gosh, that's like no, it's the end of the world. Now he's probably speaking to a fairly conservative group there. I would
Right. So
imagine.
Benedictines is conservative Novus Ordo, and you have to imagine these are conservative Novus Ordo girls, but it's still unpleasant for conservative Novus Ordo girls to hear this. It implies that marriage could take a priority over their career.
Yes, and it should. Women should decide between a career and marriage. In other words, if you want to become something, a lawyer, doctor, yes, you can do that, but don't get married. Those are two things that are incompatible. Just lead a single life.
And why is it incompatible, Your Excellency?
Because marriage is a full-time job, first of all, children, and not only children, but also the making of the home, the caring for the home, making it a stable, clean, orderly place is very important for the mental order of the child and also her husband.
Well, the lawyer can say she can just hire a cook and a nanny and take care of all this.
No, because she has to have hands-on. It's her. That's the way that she shows her love. You see, and just having some hired help is not the same thing. She has to, and the dignity of her work is measured by how God sees it, not how human beings see it. Our Blessed Lady lived a very humble life in Nazareth. If you ever saw the church in Loreto, they have the house of Loreto where they lived in Nazareth. You just gasp.
Well, I'm trying to. The watchers and listeners can't see the dimensions of this room, but I think it's about.
It's just one room, and it's a very, what you might say, bleak existence. I mean, there is nothing of worldly allurement in it. Nothing. Okay. And you just stare at it, and this is what our Blessed Lady, the Queen of the Universe, Queen of Angels, Queen of all saints, was subjected to in her life. And because she had to live the same life as our Lord, and that is in perfect humility and detachment from the world. Everything that our Lord said and did was detachment from the world. So she had to live that way. When she swept that house, she gained more merit because of the sanctity of her soul than the life of a whole saint, the whole life of a saint, because of the intensity of her love of God and the intensity of grace in her. That act of sweeping her kitchen, well, there was no kitchen, sweeping her little house. Maybe they cooked outside, I don't know, but it's how God sees it, the value that God puts on it. That is not how human beings see it. If she had said to the angel, "No, I prefer to work in Jerusalem as an executive secretary or a CEO in Jerusalem rather than do what you're asking me to do," do you think we would have ever heard about her? She would have gone down in history as a nobody.
It's a prioritization of economic standards, I suppose, over that inversion of values, Your Excellency. What is it to raise children? What is it to build a home? What is it to, and that, as you point out, that lesson is there for all of us to sweep our homes, and to do so knowing that that's part of our duties.
That has far more value in the eyes of God than anything that you're going to do in an office, or anything you're going to do in the business world. God doesn't care about any of that stuff. He cares about the raising of children in the faith and good morals and good mental abilities. In other words, children get very mentally disturbed when their home is not ordered, when the mother is not there or the father is not there, or if they are busy with other things or extracurricular activities, where they're not being what they should be. That is very disturbing to the child. He is the product of their love, and they must raise him. That is, the education, not only the bearing of children, but the education of children. Education doesn't mean book learning; it means the upbringing of children, and they have to be brought up all the way up to practically 20 years old. Right through the teens, they need all sorts of direction and love and order in the home. They have to see virtue in the home. This is what keeps them balanced mentally. And I'm not surprised that, as families break down and there's double incomes and the mother's out and there's nobody home and et cetera, that kids become very disturbed. I'm not surprised at all.
I'm assuming, Your Excellency, there was no such thing as latchkey children when you were growing
I never
up?
heard of that until
the 60s or 70s, probably?
When I was, again, a child, which is ages and ages ago, but all the mothers of the neighborhood stayed home, and everyone was on one income. That was the whole neighborhood, and we lived in a middle-class neighborhood. Everyone was home, and life was very ordered. When you got home, your mother was there, and your father came home, later in the day, and there was dinner on the table. The house was clean. If that was the order of the house, and everybody had that order. I mean, it was very exceptional that somebody didn't. And
you realize you're describing science fiction to those of us
yes.
younger people. You've never saw that.
But there was very, very. I can't even remember one case of it in the neighborhood where somebody's mother worked. And if they did, it's because they had to. Maybe the father was a drunk or something. It was very exceptional. But that was the way life was, and it was an ordered life in that sense. I mean, there was common sense, there was natural law. Things that are discussed now would have been just shocking when I was growing up. Shocking. You wouldn't even mention it. It would just be so awful that you wouldn't talk about it.
Nec nomen habitur.
Yeah.
So you've been placing everything on the supernatural plane, Your Excellency, but I think even on the natural level, I've never read any account on a deathbed where someone is, relishing their promotions or their time from work and thinking, I just wish I'd worked, 2 or 3 more days at that job. That what is the argument in the natural order that they're going to make? If they choose this path, like, okay, I'm not going to have a family and kids, I'm going to choose this life of a career, what is that going to give you at the end of the day?
It gives you nothing. You've just participated in the big, let's say, big business world, and you're a nobody at the end. You're just a cog in the machine, and they get somebody else when you're too old to do it, and you just go and die off someplace.
In fact, they used to give you a gold watch, etc. Now you just
Yes.
get an email saying, "Don't show up tomorrow."
Right, and you're too old, and that's that, and that's the end of you. And no, people forget about you. You've really done nothing except you've lined the pockets of the management. That's all.
So it's going to get a bit more triggering now, Your Excellency. I can tell you that my beautiful wife, Isabel, would be the first to say that her life truly started when she began living her vocation as a wife and as a mother. I'm on the stage today and able to be the man I am because I have a wife who leans into her vocation. I'm beyond blessed with the many talents God has given me, but it cannot be overstated that all of my success is made possible because a girl I met in band class back in middle school would convert to the faith, become my wife, and embrace one of the most important titles of all, homemaker.
Yes, let us go back to Genesis. Eve was created from Adam. She was not created apart from Adam. She was taken from Adam. Eve was created to be a helper to Adam. That's in Genesis. That is the vocation of a woman, to be a helper to men. That's divine revelation.
I'm just putting out the misogyny alert.
Yes, I know, but that's divine revelation. That's why she was created.
So what about the women who are watching this and hearing this now who feel resentful when you say that?
They should go and read Genesis.
And dispute with our Lord about it?
Dispute with God about it and, see how far they get.
So it says here in the notes, applause lasting 18 seconds after he said this. And then this led to a lot of, as you noted, pushback. And then Babylon Bee and other places put out memes saying, women upset that man, millionaire, muscular man praises his wife in public speech. Don't marry such a man. He's real dangerous.
Yes. Yeah.
She is a primary educator to our children. She is the one who ensures I never let football or my business become a distraction from that of a husband and father. She is the one that knows me best at my core, and it is through our marriage that, Lord willing, we will both attain salvation.
Those are beautiful words. Yes, she must be a very good wife.
Well, and he's once again pointing towards the last end. That
Yes.
Marriage is ideally supposed to help you attain salvation.
Yes, it is a sacrament which gives grace, and the idea is that you do your duties of state and life in marriage, and for that you are rewarded with heaven.
He touches here on a point that you brought out recently about removing God from the reproductive process. Let's be honest, there is nothing good about playing God with having children. Whether that be your ideal number or the perfect time to conceive, no matter how you spin it, there is nothing natural about Catholic birth control.
Well, there's no such thing as Catholic birth control.
I think he's probably here attacking natural family planning.
Well, I hate that term, family planning. In other words, it is permitted by Pius XII even said so, to use those times in which you are unlikely to conceive for a serious reason. In other words, it could be economic, it could be health. You see, that is permitted. So you can't attack it on that basis.
I think probably
what he might be attacking is the idea that we are going to, for no good reason, limit the number of children that we have so we can buy a boat or we can go on cruises or something like that. Yes, that is wrong because there's no serious reason there. You see, it has to be a serious reason because the whole purpose of marriage is procreation and education of children. So if you're going to limit that even in a natural way, there has to be a good reason, a serious reason.
And I think in the document you're referring to, Your Excellency, I think the Holy Father refers to, it's not open-ended, so it isn't, for 10 years, 20 years. It's something that would be in consultation with your pastor and would be re-examined periodically back to those economic conditions or health conditions.
It isn't necessary, if I recall, it's not absolutely necessary to run it by the pastor, but it is recommended to do so. If I recall, in any case, there has to be a serious reason, and if there is not a serious reason, then it's sinful.
I think he might be speaking a bit to the NFP apostles. It's been many years since I've been conservative Novus Ordo, but I remember that there was even a thing to get engaged couples, on the system, so that by the time they went on their honeymoon, they were, on board with using the natural.
Yeah, the idea is get the dream house first, and then the beautiful car and everything,
a boat,
and then have children when you're in your 30s. That is wrong, definitely wrong. Yes.
So now he turns to the men, to the gentlemen here today. Part of what plagues our society is this lie that has been told to you that men are not necessary in the home or in our communities. As men, we set the tone of the culture, and when that is absent, disorder, dysfunction, and chaos set in. This absence of men in the home is what plays a large role in the violence we see all around the nation. Other countries do not have nearly the same absentee father rates as we find here in the U.S., and a correlation could be made in their drastically lower violence rates as well. This was another cancelable statement, Your Excellency.
I agree with all of that.
Single moms are no good, this idea. And as we say, if women become single through no fault of their own, maybe they become a widow, that's something different from this, where you have absentee father rates, which, again, I'm assuming you didn't really see that growing up, Your Excellency.
No. No, no, and not only in my own house, but no, I never knew of it anyway. No, there's all the fathers of the neighborhood came home at night and were there. I never knew of anybody that was fatherless, for except for his father died or something. But I never knew of any dysfunctional family. I never knew of any. All of my friends had functional families.
When you describe this pastor, I just think of Mayberry. Everything is perfect.
It was New York City.
Right, I know.
and but just that was life. I mean, there was nobody, no friend of mine complained that he never saw his father or anything like that. Or people behaved and went to work and did what they had to do, and the mothers were home making a home and keeping it in order. And I thought that would last forever. I mean, that seems so natural that I thought, well, what else would happen, But the 60s destroyed women. The 60s. It destroyed women and destroyed the family, and that's why we're living in the horror show that we're living now.
Never be afraid to profess the one holy Catholic and Apostolic Church, for this is the church that Jesus Christ established, through which we receive sanctifying grace.
Well, that's straight out of a catechism. That's very good.
I mean,
yes.
I can't even imagine hearing this in a commencement speech.
Yes.
It was very surprising to read this. He ends with what was at the time being part of a controversy, saying Christ is king. At the time, there was a social media controversy led by Ben Shapiro that this is a shadow anti-Semitic thing to say, that Christ is king. But I suppose, Your Excellency, it's correct to say it's an anti-Judaic thing to say, because we acknowledge that the Messiah has come.
Yes.
That holding on to the old religion is not acceptable.
Yes.
So, any things, I suppose, if Harrison Butker ends up watching this, Your Excellency, what would you say to him?
Well, back to the theme that while he's trying to be a good Catholic and in accordance with all Catholic tradition, I think that he's not going to find it where he is. That the church is one. You can't call Catholicism something that has all sorts of beliefs and where there is no unity of faith. That is not Catholicism. And finding a niche in that situation is not Catholicism. That's actually a Protestant church, just like the high Anglicans, and we'll be conservative over here, and then you have the low Anglicans, and you have the Orthodox Jews, and then you have the liberal Jews. That's typical of a sect, to have a diversity of faith and diversity of worship, and it's typical of a sect. The Catholic Church is one. It's the same for everybody.
I go back to some questions you asked earlier. How did this happen? Why did this happen? And if he investigates those, I think he'll come to some interesting answers.
I think so.
Well, as always, Your Excellency, thank you for your time. For our watchers and listeners, if you think this would be helpful, please share with people who might also be interested in hearing what a Catholic cleric has to say about what Harrison Butker had to say. You can also send a super thanks if you see this later. And there's also links that Father Esposito has put in the description for you to donate directly if you'd prefer to do so that way.